Hey, it's Drybear. So today we finished the Devil in Me. We've played all of the Dark Pictures or the Supermassive games, story games. So today I wanted to rank them. This is gonna be my personal ranking, the experience that I've had with these, playing them recently. I think we played most of them very recently. So just ranking them based on character, story progression, decision making, how the plot connected together, how gruesome the deaths were, and just how fun it was to play overall. And so let's jump into it. Let's figure out which of these is the best. And this might help you decide if you're only gonna play a couple of them, these would be the ones that I would recommend. So here we have all of them. So there are technically, just for clarification, there are 4 Dark Pictures games, which is, it started with Medan, then they came out with Little Hope, then they came out with House of Ashes, and then they came out with The Devil in Me, and that is all existing in the same series, right? They're all Dark Pictures anthology. Then they have 2 other games that Supermassive has made, Until Dawn, which was, I believe, their first one, and they recently also released the Quarry, which is not part of the Dark Pictures anthology. So in Until Dawn and the Quarry, you don't have the curator, you don't have the same, it's obviously a similar style of game, but it's not the same series as the Dark Pictures. So if you've never played any of these games before, they are overall high fidelity, just like, you know, high graphics. There are definitely some situations where the eyes bug out a little bit or the mouth is hard to get just right. Mimicking human movement that way precisely without spending years animating is definitely tough. So you cut them a little slack there, but overall, very high fidelity, high graphics, and then storytelling. And so you also have these situations where you have to go through the story and then you have these branching decision paths. And based on what you choose, different things happen. And obviously, everyone has different goals. I think most people try to save all the characters in the beginning, but they have high replayability because sometimes you can't see things coming. You're not really sure what's going to happen. You may want to try again just to see if you could get a different result. So today we're going to rank all of them on this tier list to see which one was best, which one was worst. And I'm going to start with the GOAT because I don't think that it's possible to even, like, this just sets the top of the bar for us, and that's gonna be Until Dawn. Until Dawn is easily S tier. It is twice as long as most of the Dark Pictures. The Quarry, The Devil in Me, and Until Dawn were all about 8 hours. I think the House of Ashes was like 5 or 6. Devil in Me was like 6 or 7. But Little Hope and Man of Medan, was like 3 hours. Little Hope was like 4 hours. So they're not super long. But this one, I think, the reason there's several reasons why Until Dawn is peak Supermassive games. Firstly, there's story within story within story. So, you know, we don't have to spoil it too much, but there's this inner story that you're trapped in, and it's encased by another story, and that's encased by another story. And all of those stories are interconnected and interwoven, and your choices throughout the game impact all of those stories, right? So you think it's just a couple of kids going to a resort to hang out for the winter, but then you realize that something happened in the past and that's causing this other story to happen where one of the characters wants to get revenge for having killed one of the other characters in the past. But then on top of that, there's this supernatural story of Wendigos in the mountains, and it happens because of a reason and decision you made at the beginning affected that decision. So I think that aspect just makes the game feel far more cohesive, and I think it also is something that was a little bit lacking in games like Little Hope and The Devil in Me in general, just things to connect all of it together so it made it made sense. And I think all the choices in Until Dawn, every step of the way, there's some weak points in Until Dawn that felt like the decisions weren't the best, but I think 80 to 90% of it, how you handle the cutscenes and the quick time events, the decisions you make with the characters, where you put them and what you do, all matters, and they don't feel arbitrary. They feel like you have some agency in how things go. So I'd say easily Until Dawn, the best. Next, let's talk about the other non-Dark Pictures, The Quarry. So this one just came out, I believe it was this calendar year. It was very recent, and it's in the same situation as Until Dawn. It's about 8 hours, and it is non-Dark Pictures. So it is a game that is just on its own standalone. This one involves werewolves. and it involves young kids that are out in the woods, and they have things that happen between them. And it does feature, I mean, Until Dawn had, actresses in it and actors. This also has actresses and actors in it that are well known, and they usually do that for most of them. They try to get someone in there. But then, yeah, I think that it's not Until Dawn level. I liked the Quarry a lot. I liked it a lot. For me, it's either A or B. It doesn't have the same level as Until Dawn, mostly because of the story. I'm going to put it A. Because I think there were a lot of really cool connections in the Quarry. There are things that brought together. The characters themselves were well written. And I think that they related to each other really well. Until Dawn just had amazing characters that their motivations were clear. Some of them had character development. Choices that you thought didn't matter mattered because you had it. Some really cool scenes like pop, 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 butter pops. Some really cool connections. Brenda Song did great. There's some really cool things in there. And I think also they did a good job of pacing where it builds up to, should this character have a gun? Should it not have a gun? Do I trust them with a gun? What are they going to do with that gun? Should they go up to the tower? Should they not go up to the tower? And I think some of those connections really worked well. And I think also, yeah, like having some of the characters, have afflictions that affect them and those kind of decisions. Quarry for me was A. You know what? I'm just going to say, screw it. Spoilers be damned. I think one of the characters turning into a werewolf was really interesting. It brought a lot of tension onto the cast. You didn't know if it was going to affect the others. You didn't know if it was infectious. If you got bit by them, were you going to turn? If you got bit by any of the werewolves, were you going to turn into a werewolf? And then this is actually one of the few games too. In almost all of the games, I believe, there's a starting scene where their characters in the starting scene can't be saved. Right? It's the house fire in Little Hope. It's the guys in the past for Man of Medan. It's the couple in the World Fair Hotel in Devil and Me, right? It's the guys in ancient time, like ancient Babylonian times for House of Ashes. You can't save them. But in the Quarry, the two characters in the beginning, one of them lives and carries on and becomes part of the story later, which means that time difference is much smaller and quite interesting. It did happen in Little Hope where the house fire affected the main character, and when you had the big spoiler at the end of the main character being the bus driver, blah, blah, blah. Super cool, but yeah, I think that's definitely an aspect for that. But I'll put Quarry at A, because I think overall, super good time. I had a great time with it. Next, House of Ashes. I don't know whether this should be S or A. I actually believe that House of Ashes is the best Dark Pictures game in the series. Of the 4 that are in that series, House of Ashes is easily the best. Don't at me. You're wrong if you think otherwise. House of Ashes is peak. It's very, very good. It's a little bit shorter than the Quarry and Until Dawn. There's definitely some elements that felt, really close, but it's hard to put it exactly with Until Dawn, because I think Until Dawn did some things better than House of Ashes. Character development was really good. Salim, one of the best characters of all time. The main character in House of Ashes felt good. There was lots of character development where people were getting over their hatred. It was in the middle of a war, and both sides of the war had hatred for each other, and they had to, like, when they encountered the vampires, they're like, oh, can we get over this or not? Are we going to be able to overcome our differences to survive? The decisions all throughout made very big differences, and whether or not you had the pipe or not, things like that. Do I put it over the Quarry? I don't know if I put it under or equal to Until Dawn. Do I put it over the Quarry? I would say yes. So if it's like an A plus, or maybe just S but lower than Until Dawn, I think that's the way it goes. House of Ashes, excellent, very good. The fidelity overall was really, really good quality. The decisions were cool. The visuals were cool. You changed venue and setting so often, right? You start out in ancient times, then you go to the desert, then you go deep into this temple, then you go deeper in the temple, and you find these alien vampires, and everything goes green and gooey and gross, and then it's crazy, man. It's a whole ride. I think this one's great. Super high replayability as well on what you choose and how you choose it. Some of the most memorable characters. I think Salim is one of the most memorable characters in all of Supermassive games. Dude is hotness. He's very good. So House of Ashes, I would put on S, slightly below Until Dawn, but above the Quarry. Next, is we're gonna have to establish the baseline. We have Little Hope, Man of Medan, and The Devil in Me, which just came out. Of these, okay, I think Man of Medan is the worst. I don't know if it's D tier. I would say it's probably C tier. I'm gonna put Man of Medan at C tier. This one was kind of an interesting shift, right? Because they did Until Dawn and then Man of Medan. So if you just got done playing Until Dawn and then you booted up the 3-hour Man of Medan, it was like heartbreaking because Until Dawn was so fantastic and Man of Medan was so meh. The story was kind of interesting. There's a ghost ship. You arrive at the ghost ship. There's like zombies and stuff. You know, it's still a fun time. It's great to play with friends or with stream chat. Super fun group play thing, but compared to the rest of them, I don't think Man of Medan stacks up. That, you know, there's some diving segments. Some of the decisions matter, some of them don't. The villains were just pirates, and they weren't even smart pirates half the time. And then the villains transition into these like spooky dookies. There's some really cool scenes where like you have to pull the bullet out of the body, and then like you're not sure if you're going crazy or not. And it's like pirate gold that's cursing everyone. But at the end of the day, the pirate gold didn't matter that much. Like it didn't really actually play, you know, like the bends from diving and rising too quickly was your biggest enemy, or like sometimes a guy with a hammer. Like it just didn't feel like the decisions were really all that impactful. And you just kind of gotta, you know, it's still a fun ride, but compared to these, it's kind of mid, man. It's mid, to be honest, TBH. The next question is between Devil in Me and Little Hope. Where do we put them? I think the story of Devil in Me is superior to Little Hope and Man of Medan, for sure. So for me, Devil in Me is B or A. So let's do Little Hope first. Okay. Little Hope, I think, goes B. I think it's a B tier. Personally, the witches I could care less about. So this is a story where, like, you start out as a, you know, this bus driver full of people, and you're going on a field trip, and then the bus crashes, and you got to go into this misty Silent Hill style town where you like try to figure things out. And the real story is the story that you get revealed at the very end and the very beginning. The middle part where they distract you with witches and the Salem trials, I honestly couldn't really buy into. It wasn't super engaging. It was like, okay, is a witch? Is she a witch? I don't know. Kill him, whatever. And then they tried to connect the witch story to the main story in like like the real characters in modern day, and that like their fates were tied together. So if they died in the past in Salem trials, when they died in modern day, and you know, it was just it was okay. I wish they focused more on the Silent Hill, Misty Town, amnesia aspect and try to connect that all together. I could have done without the witches and the wardrobes and the warlocks and the time travel aspect. And I think some of the decisions were a little arbitrary. Better than Man of Medan for sure on how it affected the story and how you went through it. But you know, it's just, yeah. It's B. It's B for me. Good replayability, better than Man of Medan. Not as good as the Quarry. Definitely not on the same level as Until Dawn, House of Ashes. Next is The Devil in Me. Now, The Devil in Me. Now, The Devil in Me. The D, no. I would say if there weren't any bugs, if they patch it, if it's patched, there aren't any bugs, it works well, I would put it low A. Right above Little Hope. Story is super cool. I like the Saw-like, cube-like mechanics, being trapped in there, being led there. There's some really cool ways that tie the story back to the beginning. Yada, yada, yada. Super interesting. The bugs definitely detract from it. It was probably not really ready for release. It was very buggy. Had a lot of issues with it. The other thing that bothers me is much of the decision-making in the game feels very linear or just kind of obtuse. Like, it just doesn't really seem to matter much. Like, the actual, like, should you choose this or should you choose that? Actually, like, of all the games, in every single one of these games, of these 5, I cared deeply for the characters, and I wanted to make sure I saw them survive, and I tried to make the best choices for them with moral, you know, with like a moral compass, caring a lot. Halfway through Devil in Me, I kind of just wanted to see them die. Partially because, not because of the characters themselves, but just because it felt like my decisions were meaningless. Like, it just, some of the decisions were like, hey, do you want Apple Jacks or do you want pumpkin seeds? And you're like, I don't know, pumpkin seeds. All right, half the cast is dead. And you're like, none of that makes any sense. It doesn't mean anything. None of it just doesn't connect to anything. It just felt like they were just arbitrary, random choices, and based on how you randomly chose, things would happen. I felt like, you know, if the choices were more meaningful and more connected, and the characters were more connected, and they were a little more subtle and less upfront with some of the things, like, it felt like some of the jump scares were very like indie horror jump scares, you know, like loud equals scary, or hey, when you can't move your camera and you're stuck in this like passageway, we're gonna jump scare you and there's nothing you can do about it. And some of the decisions that you make in the game, like, do you take the inhaler or not? Do you go to the grate or not? Like, it just felt like it didn't carry a lot of weight. Everything else, the visuals, the storyline, the character development was decent. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't as good as the Quarry, but it was probably a little better than Little Hope. And just everything else was really good. I just felt like the gameplay itself, the decision making, and also the bugs just kind of took away from it a lot. So I would put it at low A, and this is my Dark Pictures tier list. Until Dawn and House of Ashes are goated. Best in the series. If you're looking for ones to play, start with Until Dawn and House of Ashes. They're super, super good. Quarry is also very good. It has some weak parts, but it's still super good. Devil Me is good. I would wait for patches to fix it up. Little Hope is good. Good enough. And Man of Medan is aight. Like, it's aight. It's chill. You know, it is what it is. There you go. What is your listing? I can actually put a link to this because I just made this if you want to do their own rankings. But yeah, if you want to do your rankings, check it out. How would you move these around if you were in the driver's seat? And that's it. There you go. There's my list. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content. Link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.